My name is Sara Villagio, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Carnegie Hall here in New York City. And wow, these chairs are way more comfortable than last year. Just need to acknowledge that for a second. I really like this mid-century vibe. I work at Carnegie Hall, as I said. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a white woman with curly brown hair, and today I'm wearing a black blazer and a floral dress and some boots because I just felt like it was time, even though the temperature got hot. But yeah, like I said, I'm really excited to be back, and I'm incredibly honored and excited to be back with this group of stellar panelists who are here with me today. But I'm happy to be back at boot camp again because to me, and we've been hearing lots about like hugs and like how warm this room is, and that is all true to me. But what it represents to me is that there are a lot of great minds in this room, and we're all convening in a safe space together where we can share ideas and creativity and challenge ourselves. And I think that's what makes this particular conference really special to me. So just wanted to share that with you too. So yeah, where's that clicker? Okay, I've got it. I asked each of the panelists here to, they're gonna each introduce themselves, of course, but we each have a quote up on our title slide that says a little bit about why we decided to say hell yes to joining this panel. So for me, this quote is actually attributed to RBG, one of my personal heroes, but what it represents to me is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned at Carnegie Hall in the last 6+ years that I've been there, which is that, and it's something some of you may have heard me say before, small changes drive big impact. And as a leader of a great, amazing team, many of whom are here today, I'm looking around for them, I see them, yes, thank you, okay, thank you guys. Many of whom are here today. I just think everyone's making small changes all the time that are actually driving results, and we need to release ourselves from always having to have the biggest and the best idea in the room. So with that, I'm gonna turn it to Fatima next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Fatima Jones. I'm the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at the world-famous Apollo Theater up in Harlem, New York.
Woo, woo, woo.
And my team's not here because we have a lot going on, so I'm sending them the link after this. I love you all. I'm an African-American woman wearing a black dress and a green scarf. I'm wearing sandals because I'm embracing the
Rock on, rock on. We had a panel, we needed to have some conflict, right?
Natural locks in a bun, and my quote is if everything is important, then nothing is. I'm sure you all are dealing with multiple priorities all the time. Everyone thinks that everything's important, so I kind of hold on to this as a mantra of mine. So it's nice to be here. Thank you again for inviting me.
Awesome, thanks Fatima. Aaron, over to you.
Great. Hi, I'm Aaron Bisman. I'm VP of Audience Development at Sesame Workshop. Really nice to be back here at boot camp. I'm a white male. I used to have red hair, but I don't have much left. I'm wearing a teal blazer and a t-shirt with Elmo on it, because that's a fun thing I get to do. But not every day at the office. And my quote is, curiosity drives innovation and impact. Are you curious about the right things? This is, I might not say it in these exact words, but this is definitely a driving force in my leadership. I think prioritization generally, but specifically about marketing activities, especially those that are not directly trackable or necessarily actionable, right? It's extremely hard to make decisions about what to say yes to. And yet, as leaders, particularly, it's our job both to say no, right? And to say no in appropriate and right ways. And I'm excited to share some of my thoughts, but also learn from my friends and colleagues up here, as well as hopefully all of you in the Q&A. So thank you.
Thanks, Derek, or Aaron. Yes, whoops. And now we're on to Derek.
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I am Derek Johnson, VP of Marketing at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. I am a black male. I am wearing a lot of blue today. Blue suit, blue shirt, brown shoes, cognac colored maybe, perhaps. Brown glasses on. The quote I chose was, when you undervalue what you do, the world will undervalue who you are. And that can be attributed to the great Oprah Winfrey.
Yes.
And I think that really just has a lot of impact for us as the producers of the art and facilitators of the art. We have to believe in what we do to convince the rest of the world to believe in what we do. And I also think this can tie into yourself. You have to value yourself in order to put in the work as well. I think a lot of us maybe have suffered from some imposter syndrome here and there. And this is a reminder that you are worthy. Get into the mirror, do those self-affirmations, brag a little on yourself, talk your stuff. And I like this quote for that reason.
Thanks, Derek. I really want to go back and watch the Snoop Dogg videos now, so it's on my follow-up list in my notepad. So wanted to give a little bit of context about this topic and this conversation and why I decided to dig into it. And I have to admit, it feels a little bit more vulnerable than talking about subscriptions, which is what I talked about last year with the panel. I was like, oh, lots of my emotional labor is going to come into this conversation, so thank you for bearing with me on that. But what I wanted to share is that as arts marketers, we are in a position to always be learning. There is always something new on our plates. There is always a new social media platform, like we've learned about in the last day or so. Has anyone been real lately? I have not. There is always a new tactic to try. I was so relieved when Troy said something about influencer marketing being successful yesterday, because I was like, does anyone know if it's working? Is it working? Should I invest time in that? Or there's always a new program, there's a new concert for us in my case. And funnily enough, I realized earlier this week that 3 of the 4 of us on stage have all discussed putting Club Quarantine Live with D-Nice on sale in 5 weeks or less. So anyway, that was kind of a funny thing to pick up on. But yeah, there's always something new to do. Or we're having to communicate about topics that we never imagined we would on behalf of our organizations, and that's always sitting with me as well. Yeah, so some days I'm really tired, just gonna admit it. Yeah, some days it is exhausting to think about all of the decisions that we have to make in any one given moment. But on the flip side, because there is always a flip side and a silver lining for me, as I'm kind of a realistic optimist, which is something I'll steal from Eric Gensler a few years ago at boot camp. The flip side for me is that we are always having the chance to work out our brains. And if you know me personally, you know that I actually really love to work out, but that also translates to my headspace. I love that we always have the chance to test our skills and our knowledge and our curiosity. And I'll just say that I think as arts marketers and arts administration professionals, we are required to be some of the most agile people I have ever met. We are doing everything in our organizations. We are wearing all kinds of hats. We are making so many different decisions about what is best for our organizations at any given moment in time. And I think that is a true specialty unto itself. So I just want to applaud all of you for that, because I think that is the labor of our work and the intensity of it, but again, also what makes it really amazing each day. So with that, I'd love to start engaging our panelists, yay. And my first question to them was really just getting right to the heart of it. How do you respond to the new? So I wanted to ask Derek if he would be willing to kick us off for this one.
Sure. Thank you. Responding to the new, that's a great question. I think there are times where someone says, let's do something new, and I immediately start to panic. and that's the real of it. This is going to be a real conversation with everyone. But I do step back and I kind of go through a number of prompts. So I ask myself, what is going to be the revenue potential of this new thing that we are being asked to do? Does this align with our stated goals, our overall goals for the department, for the institution? And last but not certainly least, I think about what impact does this mean for the team itself? Like, if we start this new thing, is it sustainable? You all heard from my wonderful colleague, Monica Holt, yesterday. And in some of the things she was talking about, she was discussing how we work. And that is really something that I like to focus a lot on, is how we as a team are able to come up with solutions, how we're able to enact things, make sure this is something that can continue to move forward. I love the fact now that there is a lot more emphasis on taking care of our people. I don't think that was always the case for a lot of us sitting in the room, especially earlier in our careers. And I think that is part of the conversation that needs to be had when coming to a yes for something new.
Awesome, thank you. Fatima, anything?
A lot of what Derek said, I'll say also too, I try to put myself in the position of the person doing the asking, right? Like what's their why behind the question? Also, is this an energy giver or energy depleting request? And, you know, again, thinking about business outcomes, you know, then we all have our secret marketing goals, right? We have our stated ones, and then we've got some secret ones. And so I say, is this, you know, will this play into any of those goals? And then there's long games and short games, right? And I try to give grace to my programming team. I'm like, is this a long game request? Is this a short game request? Lots, you know, I'm generally a person that's easy to say no. Like I'm a Black Power baby. I came up fighting the system. So I had to work on making sure that I can meet people at their yes. So it's kind of a work in progress.
Aaron, anything you want to add?
Well, I'm with both of you on all that. Something I learned from a teacher many years ago was like this concept of like, well, like my goal is to say yes, right? The goal is not to be negative and shut things down. Although, you know, my first arts marketing job, I was told like, you're kind of the brand police. Like your job is sometimes to say no. You got to, especially if you're brand focused. But so the goal in the midst of I do the freaking out. Like, I mean, the stress of like, either I have to explain, the time it's going to take to explain why this isn't
right.
So I really do ascribe to these, but at the same time, I'm trying to lean in to say yes as much as possible, so that which means challenging my own assumptions and my own biases, and still being comfortable with no, you know, when we have to be.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is why I wanted them here, because I am like the ultimate people pleaser. I would so much rather say yes to everybody than say no to anything because I want to make people happy. So I find it really difficult to say no sometimes. But I've been trying to kind of root myself in understanding like what is the reality, you know, like what can I realistically accomplish in the time that I have, and what are the impacts of my team on my team, which I think a lot of you, all three of you, touched on in some way. So it's great to hear that. So my next question was to ask each of them to describe what does a nimble team or marketer look like today? And I say team or marketer because I recognize that many of you who are in the room might wear a lot of hats at your organization. So I just wanted to put that in there. It's both a team and an individual perspective. But we've heard the word nimble a lot the last few years. Pivot, what else? Anyone got one? You know, all these buzzwords. But actually, like I think being nimble and agile is one of our great strengths as marketers. So I wanted to ask each of them to respond to that. And Aaron, love for you to start.
Sure. So I think, you know, what any team or marketer really needs to live in the buzzwords is to be curious, confident, and quick when necessary, right? So curiosity to me is the number one thing. I hire for curiosity. I don't know how you cannot be a curious person, particularly in these jobs, but you really have to lean into that, right? If we know that what worked yesterday is almost definitely not going to work tomorrow, right? It requires this nimbleness, but asking the right questions is what's going to help get us there. Having the confidence then to take the actions we need to take, understanding how to take calculated risks. And ultimately what I think, what I'm looking for and what I try to cultivate in my team is holistic thinkers, right? Who can hold lots of viewpoints, right, at once, lots of perspectives, and figure out how to synthesize those things into the most strategic plan or output. There's a great idea that writer Isaiah Berlin first put forth in the 50s, but that I learned about recently from NPR on the Hidden Brain podcast, which is sort of thinking about different thinkers as hedgehogs or foxes, right? Hedgehogs take everything into one view of the world and one organizing principle, right? Whereas foxes, they live in contradictions, they're comfortable with nuance, and ultimately that allows them to have different strategies for different problems, right? Now, in reality, we need to be surrounded by both types of thinkers, right? Having uniformity is not great, but I'm looking for more hedgehogs, right? I'm looking, and I try to cultivate that in my team, and that's about like living in a safe space, identifying our shared values and what we're aiming for, and then really tackling the idea, right? So it's like the first idea is not the best thing. The first ask that comes forward is probably not the best idea, but let's work it out together. Let's bring different viewpoints to it, and together really find the piece. If you can do that, I think you can be very successful, in this ever-changing space.
Thank you. Derek?
I don't want to follow that, but that was really great. And really just building upon what you just said about the different types of thinkers, I think that a nimble team is a diverse team. You have different types of people. You have the more analytical types. You have the more arts-centric or creatives on your teams, but also from the sense of the lived experience of people. I think you will have a faster process and a much more thought-through product if you already have that diversity within the team working on something to deliver a final product versus a single-minded team delivering a product at the very end and then trying to decide or discuss and see where the blind spots are.
Yeah. I think, I hate the word nimble, and I like to move slow sometimes. I think there's a time when you need to slow things down, right, to really think it through. So I think, the first thing that comes to mind is that my team has different thinkers and different strengths, right? So I took a lot of time to get to know people and know what their strengths are within this, this team and the work that we need to do. And I always say there are a few teams that add the razzle-dazzle. Like I have a couple of people on my team, they're team too much, their ideas are over there, right? But sometimes you need that razzle-dazzle. Sometimes you need the very logistical, thought-out process, and then you need somebody to throw that stank on it, And you need to have the balance, right? And so I think, depending on the project, you put the right people in the room and you can be nimble, right? You put the wrong people in the room and it's moving very slowly, So I think, and acknowledging that, right? Like stating it, right? To say that I'm a logistical person or or whatever, so that it's not a secret, right? You're putting the right people in the room to move quickly if you need to.
Definitely. And I think in one of our earlier conversations, I think you had said that it all starts with you, and how you respond to any given moment. And I think about that a lot because I'm often responding too quickly. I need to force myself. I need to work really hard to slow down, which people who work with me closely may or may not be aware of. But I think something that I was thinking about recently was that I also need to take time to listen. And I think about that often. It's my high school band director. I'm going to go there right now. When he taught me how to improvise in jazz, he reminded me that silence could be just as impactful as filling the space with notes. Yeah. And I think about that translates to me in a business sense as well, that I can take the time to listen, and that listening will actually be my superpower when it comes to being nimble and responsive.
Definitely.
So.
We have a team slogan, it's one band, one sound.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
I need one of those. I want a slogan.
Yeah, a team slogan, a team song, it brings it all together.
Yeah. So my next question for the group, I kind of threw this at them. It was one of my backups, and then I talked to Christopher Williams about it wherever he is, and there he is. He told me it was better than one of the other ones, so here I am, switching it up. But I wanted to ask all of you what kind of question, because we've already hit a lot on questions, what questions we're asking. But when you decide whether or not to say yes or no, what is a question you might ask yourselves? So Fatima, I wondered if you could start this one.
Yeah, I guess what would it take to get to a yes? Right? Like what? And then energetically, what does this feel like? Right? I'm really big on energy, so there's some ideas that make you feel like really super excited, and there's some ideas that you're like, what the hell? And so, I think you need to follow your intuition. Sometimes you actually do have to follow your intuition, because I've been working in the business for 30 years. I know what I'm talking about a lot of the time. And I literally, kind of going back to what you mentioned, Derek, I have to say that to myself, you're not crazy. You actually have been through this before. You're in the mirror talking to yourself like Eminem, It's like,
yeah.
But yeah, it's how can I get to that yes? Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Derek, you want to go next?
It's really the same. I think in some instances, my no game was getting kind of strong. And so I needed to flip that and adopt a mentality of how do we get to yes. And I think of our department, our marketing department, as a service department. So that needs to be how we're leading. And if it needs to be a no, it needs to be well thought out and explaining why we're saying no to this, but here's an alternative of how we might be able to do something better and get to a yes.
Great. Aaron, anything to add?
I want to piggyback just off a description. Marketing is clearly client. We're client facing, serving, but I am desperate to be seen as a team as strategic partners, right? And that's a hard line because we have to get the job done for other people, but because and I'm being very vulnerable, my challenge is that most of the questions to do new things that come in are not from my team, they're from people outside of marketing, right? And so you do have this added layer of they might not fully understand our world or what they're asking about. So that's where personally I'm working also on my game face and slowing down, taking a beat. Can you tell? I don't have one. But I'm going to use an example, it's slightly different, but it's the fast one, which is so in social media, right? We run 30 social accounts. It's a team of 3.5. And yeah, it's great. I mean, we have 54 years of history, so there's a great archive, but we make a lot of original content. Some of it is harder and more expensive and more timely to make than other things. So when an idea comes up for content, regardless of where it comes from, my new question is, do you think this will perform better than the average post? We're always tracking our average benchmarks on a monthly and annual basis. And within the team, if someone's very confident, this is absolutely gonna kill it, that's an easy way to lean in. They're confident, they have an explanation to back it up, they know the numbers, they live it just like I do. If there's any hesitation, I'm do you really want to spend that much time and effort? Is it worth the work with legal, the time, et cetera, if you think it's just going to do as well as anything else we could do? So obviously it doesn't translate exactly to every scenario, but it's the type of question. The other question, especially from outside, that I ask is why? Right? That's my first question, hopefully politely. But why? What are you hoping to accomplish with this, right? What's your goal? I'll end here with in terms of being client-facing, we've shifted the sort of mechanisms for requests to us. So it's you can't really formally come to us and ask for a social media post. What you can say is, I'm looking for owned media support for my program or product or whatever it might be. And we take you through a list of questions in a form, right, that helps us understand your why, so we can then work strategically together to get to the what.
Yeah, we implemented a form as well for graphics and social requests. It kind of forces people to go through the system, think it through, The other tactic I use, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When we get a request for another thing on top of a very long list of things, I kind of just go through the list. I'm here's a list of all the things we're working on. How does your request fit in with this list? I try to bring them into our world a little bit because it's easy to forget how many things are happening, right? I think as marketers, we kind of just move on to the next thing and we just know it's going to be a lot. But sometimes just bringing people in at least helps a little bit to get people on your side.
I love that. I think all of you have touched a little bit on transparency in some way, shape, or form. And I think that helping others understand what we're facing is really critical, actually. So I wanted to point that out. Like I said, I really like to say yes. So for me, I have to think about how I'm going to say no really hard. And the question I have is really is the battle worth fighting? I think about that a lot because relationships, as a service team, but also a same thing. I feel like I want our team to be seen as strategic partners to every aspect of the organization. And that's one of the really special things about marketing is that we do work with pretty much every aspect of our organizations. And that's awesome. I want to be that strategic partner, but that means that relationships and political capital are really important to me. So I think a lot about that as well.
Yeah. As we were talking here, I think a lot of times as marketers, we get stuck in this rut of just producing.
Yep.
And so it was great to hear you talking about slowing down, you talking about what is the why, and it all is coming back to what is the strategic thought behind it.
Definitely.
And it's also those who are making the request of you. by slowing it down, they have to think through their ideas a bit more. I think that's all very helpful.
Go ahead.
After you.
No, I was going to say, I know we're going to talk about trust a little bit, but one thing also to kind of get people again on your side is that when you were going to say no and you did say yes and it worked out, to go back to the person and say, hey, you know what, actually, I didn't think that was going to work out, but it did, right? Just to build that camaraderie and just, we're human. Sometimes you make the wrong call or we're a little not sure about something. I think it's important to have that transparency.
Absolutely. Were you going to add something?
Yeah, I was sort of similarly.
Oh, okay.
I think the way I intentionally build trust around the company is by over-communicating and being as transparent as possible. And we do monthly reports, biannual reports, campaign reports. Some we share, some we do for our own purposes. We critique everything we're doing ourselves. But my favorite thing in those moments when I'm sharing reports to do is see this thing that didn't perform well at all. It was my idea, or it was our team's, right? To really, because it's not I'm insisting that we don't only look at what's good. We should look at what is unsuccessful, right? Just like we should look at what's average. I'm learning that average is so helpful because average is great. It's not bad. But being able to say it's not oh, see, your ideas were terrible. It's rather not everything succeeds at the same level. This is an iterative learning environment. It kind of has to be. And it should be comfortable. No one is critiquing you, the individual who had the idea. We're critiquing the idea. Or we're analyzing the idea. And I've found that over time, this kind of method really does build that trust. And so to your example of being able to go back to someone I made a mistake or I realized you were right. It's amazing how rare it is, at least it used to be, for leaders to be that honest with the people around them. And I don't know, if you can cultivate it or if it comes naturally to you, it can be an incredible superpower.
Totally agreed. Well said. Yeah. All right. I'm going to move us forward a little bit. I wanted to talk about whether or not your organizations are willing to pilot things, put things out there into the world that are not yet done. And I think Noelle touched on this in her presentation yesterday a little bit as performers and as artists, we're working to put something forward to an audience that is the best possible thing we can imagine it to be. So I'm curious, to hear about what happens when you're beta testing at your organizations. What does that look like? So Derek, I think you have a great example I'd love for you to share.
Sure. I think this will be relevant for many in the room here. While we don't have 30 accounts that we're managing at the Kennedy Center, we do have a few. And we were really trying to kind of stop the proliferation of social media accounts popping up from other departments that they were managing.
Anyone familiar?
It happens, and all, of course, good intent. Everyone just wants to highlight their programming, which is a wonderful thing. However,
even if there's only 10 people looking at it.
There you go. It can be a bit unruly. So because fortunately we do have a really good relationship with our programming department, we did say yes to a pilot for a new hip-hop Instagram account as well as comedy. And we started it under the understanding that this was going to be a trial for us. We delivered a brand guideline. We had some metrics that we laid out and said we'll reassess in January to decide if this is something that we want to continue or not. It has not been without some bumps here and there along the road, but that's the purpose of a test. And one thing that I had to get over, I was terrified thinking, but if we started, it has to go on forever. We can't possibly have an account that we sunset. But 5-10 years down the road, I don't think people are going to care that we had an account for 4 or 5 months and we had to shut it down. So.
I love that example. Thank you. Anyone want to add anything to this one?
I'll say we actually don't beta test that much, I'll be honest, but we are in the middle of one, and that is we're trying out SMS. I'm not sure if some of you are trying that out. We thought we'd try out with a festival we did a few weeks ago just to test it out, and so that's how we're kind of dipping our toe in the water. But it's hard, especially for a place like the Apollo where there's a sense of when you hit the stage, when you put something out in the world, it's going to be excellent. You know, there's a level of anxiety I have about that. So it's something I'm trying to work on, to be honest with you.
Same. Erin, anything to add on that one? You good? Okay. I'll just add that I'm working rigorously on myself to look at things through the lens of perfect versus good enough to learn. And that's kind of how I'm trying to assess like whether something can go into beta mode or not. And I was reflecting because we had a meeting the other day with a group that worked on our website, which we had relaunched back in like 2017, which was, of course, one of the most excruciating projects I've ever worked on. I'm sure none of you have ever been through that stakeholder mishmash, but just to say that I wondered, you know, if I were to start this project tomorrow, how would I approach it? And I think the difference between then and now, for me at least, is that I would rather figure out how to put portions of the website forward live to get actionable real-time feedback from users instead of like having a grand dramatic reveal from behind the curtain. Like, what can I learn, you know, now versus before I invest a lot of resources in it? Because we all know that not only is our time limited, but also our financial resources are not infinite. So I was just thinking a lot about that. Like, how do I, you know, continue to infuse a spirit of test and learn in everything we do?
That's so good. We need to talk more about that.
Go for it.
I want,
That's what
I want that, like, I want that energy, because I have a phrase at work, I'm like, there's no such thing as soft launches anymore, right? Yeah. They're like, we're going to soft launch it. I'm like, as soon as people have access to social media, it's launched. You're out there, right?
Yep.
You can't tell people, I mean, yes, I mean, you can have a constant and take the cell phones and say, no, you can't take photos, right? But people are still going to respond to it. And if they respond well, that's great. And if they don't, and it gets picked up and it runs like wildfire, then your soft launch is now a launch, right? So, yeah, I battle with myself.
It's a tough one.
Yeah,
Definitely is.
Yeah. Great.
All right. This sounds like an interview question. Can you describe a scenario? All right. I wanted to ask everyone if they could help describe a scenario where you were able to simplify something. How could you improve your approach, simplify, and maximize the resources that you have? And I think Erin has a great example for this one.
Thank you. So I joined Sesame Workshop about 3.5 years ago, right? And this is the nonprofit behind Sesame Street. Most people know Sesame Street, but we do a lot of other things. We have a huge domestic education program. We're active all over the globe with varying size projects. And in the US, for some reason, we had more than 6 websites, not including sesamestreet.org, which is like a child-facing kind of gaming and video site. So we had 6 websites, which means 6 sites cannibalizing branded search terms, 6 business teams working with 6 production leads, all working with the same tech team to make web changes. Right? It was very confusing when I got there. I had to build a case, first of all, for why I thought simplifying into a single website made sense, how it could be done, why it should be done. It took us 1.5 years to get the stakeholder buy-in that we needed to get this done, and then another year to build the site the way we wanted to build it. But we launched in April, right? And so I'm very lucky. Sesame Workshop is an amazing place with all kinds of experts. One of the best parts of the process, well, not best, an interesting part was throughout people saying, like, I've also tried to suggest it. Like, it wasn't until we were able to find a narrative, a strategic framework that everyone could understand and agree upon. Like, it was very hard to deny the quantity of search volume for the term Sesame Workshop relative to the number of clicks when you saw 7 results and you know that, humans are paralyzed with indecision if you have too many results. I was like, we had all, we built this case, we were on the same page, and then once we were in it, it became everyone's idea and everyone's project. And so that was just really amazing. And then throughout, we could talk about, well, what are we gonna do after it launches? Because there used to be, 25 people involved in deciding content, but they weren't using data. What if data led on some decisions, on this website? So we put all that forward. We worked through that during the build. And the results today, we're 6 months in. We've doubled total sessions year over year on the site. We've tripled the number of emails we've collected through mostly organic lead gen. So they're early numbers. The site is built both to serve mission, to deliver educational resources to educators, teachers, as well as parents. It's also built to help us with individual giving. So we're certainly not out of the woods. But that simplification of 6 to 1, of simplifying the team, simplifying the approach has certainly been a success and one I'm really proud of.
That's great. Thank you. It's a great example. Anyone else have one?
I don't know. I think the very first thing that comes to mind is we're often trying to figure out how we can combine our marketing campaigns with our development goals. And so we're trying to, what I call collapse and combine efforts. Devo will have things that they want to do, and I'm like, well, is there a campaign that we can combine it? It sounds like obvious, but there was a time when those things weren't happening. So we try to look at the calendar and just say, when can we combine those things so we can do it in one swoop. And then just like super granular, because there's so many different social media platforms and such, I've been trying to find a way to not tax the social media person and distribute some of that work just a little bit. So for example, on LinkedIn, I feel like it's appropriate for the comms person to run, right? It doesn't have to be social media because so much of that is business focused and human focused. So she runs LinkedIn on behalf of the social media team, and they work together to make sure that happens.
That's great.
Yeah, and I'm kind of hearing both of what you all are saying, not nearly to the scale of combining websites, but just the process of being transparent and showing data and whatnot to get to where you needed to be. This is, again, on a smaller scale, but just the fact that we're now using Asana as an organization, and really hats off to Devin sitting there, getting our social media in line with that, and how a lot of the posts can go in there, and we can see the scheduling, because the marketers weren't always able to see what was going on. Now it's an open process. With our multimedia team as well, they now have kind of like a point system and a shared calendar that we can all see. And that determines what sorts of projects that they'll be working on. There's a rubric of ROI. Is it mission driven? Is this purely for views? And that way we're able to see where those coverage gaps may be, where our social media team might be able to fill in as well.
Yeah, I think I forgot the biggest one. When I got to the Apollo about 4.5 years ago, marketing and comms were separate. So the biggest collapse and combine was combining those departments. And so there was a time when PR would go before social, something would go out, the website's not updated. Now everything is combined. And I feel like most of us have done that, but I also run into different organizations where they're not combined. And so combine them, y'all. Don't make no sense for those things to be separate. Just go ahead and do it. Go back to your people. Tell them that's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. That's the quote there. All right. I think yesterday at the panel they talked. I think Shonali brought up Teams, or Slack or whatever systems you use. That's been one of the things out of the pandemic that I've actually found really useful. For example, and I don't know if he's here, one of our colleagues started a food alert Teams. There's 100 people on the food alert teams for the office, so when there's leftover food at the office,
I love it.
100 people find out, and there's like a mad dash to that kitchen. But actually, Teams can also be a really effective way to get work done, such as my colleague Laurel, who's here today too, started a chat that's specifically for pre-sales and on-sales. Like what is happening in real time, who needs to follow up on what, are we checking that, all those things you just said, like is the website live, does it work, should I send an email out, and actually like it's also a great way for us to celebrate, like, because I don't know about you all, but when we put a new season on sale, that's always one of those like we're putting our own show on as marketers, that's the moment for us. So there's also a lot of like celebration in that chat when we get past that stress moment and actually put everything live and hit send on the many emails. But yeah, so all right. Okay, my next question is about communication. So I wanted to ask if you have advice for others on when you need to communicate your perspective in a situation that is trying for you or challenging. Like, where do you go with that? Like, what advice, where do you begin? Fatima?
Oh, not my strong suit. Yeah, again, I think, I don't know. I mean, talking points, like I'll use my own advice when I'm working on big initiatives with my spokespeople, my executives, whoever is speaking on behalf of the Apollo, giving talking points. So literally writing down what I want to share, right, before I get into the conversation. And then just remembering that we are not building homes for people. We are not, curing the latest disease. Is it really, that, does it have to be as emotional as it may feel in your body,
Definitely.
Stepping back from it a little bit is helpful when you start to feel a little emotional. But it's a work in progress.
Same, totally agree with that. Aaron?
Yeah, so Sesame Workshop is a research-based institution. So I've learned to always have data at my fingertips, which doesn't only mean marketing data, although that's the bulk of it, that I'm always going to be asked what peer organizations are doing. I'm always going to be asked what, if I've checked in with certain other teams, our own historical record, because it's, again, you also have 54 years. We all have lots of history, and that it's very important to us, as well as marketing data. So I build a lot of decks. I feel like I've learned to process my thinking through building decks, and have learned from a friend at a really strong agency. It's like, how few words can you use to convey your point? That is not my strong suit as a starting point, but that's where I'm always aiming to get to. So ideally, like take the time, calm down, because I'm typically not starting there. Bring together that information, if appropriate, build the deck. Right, and so then my case is not emotional, my case is not personal, right? I'm synthesizing all this information and through it presenting a holistic point of view.
I love that. How few words can you use? I think we should apply that to emails too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Derek, anything you want
Yeah,
to
I always try to assume good intent. That's where I start off, and I know that can be very difficult depending on how you received the communication, whether it was a conversation or an email. Might not always be in the spirit of which you hoped it would be. But I try to go past that and say that email, or it was said this way because they are passionate about what they're doing. So it always still comes back to the art itself. Then I try to, depending on what it is, bring in data to make my case and send it on.
I love what you're hitting on about putting yourself in someone else's shoes, because it's so easy to react in the moment. Like, there was an email I got this morning where I was like, oh, that's irritating, and I wasn't happy about it. But then I thought, like, okay, let me take a step back and step away from my phone for a minute and digest what's happening and understand that, yeah, like you said, I mean, someone else, whatever they're facing and or what their intention is, are not necessarily the thing we might be picking up on in that moment.
And you can also assume good intent and then also have a follow-up conversation with said person. About the way the email or the communication came off. I think that's
Totally agreed.
important to us to be accountable for how we communicate with our colleagues.
Yeah, I'll add too that there's times when email is not appropriate, right? We know that. And sometimes just a conversation will tame the email mafia, of it all. A voice-to-voice conversation, a face-to-face conversation. There's times when that is important. There's times when a deck is more important. Personally, I love the Apollo, I love my colleagues. They're not reading my reports. You have to know when that's the truth, and sometimes you just have to bring those talking points or those main points to them verbally. You kind of know your audience like we do on the marketing side, right? Know your audience.
Totally. I think also, we've been talking a lot about asking good questions along the way, and I think the challenge personally is always to say, am I making that up? Have I filled in the blanks of what I'm assuming to be the case, and or do I need to ask questions to understand if my assumption is correct or not? And that's something that I try to just go in with a question and just even check, did I take this in the way it was intended, like you're saying? And I think another thing that's important in that moment is just even how you take a pause and acknowledge perspective, acknowledge someone else's perspective. I think, Derek, you were kind of getting at that too, just putting yourself in the other person's shoes and thinking about, why did they say this, do this? Why did they ask for this?
What's
whatever
their
it is.
motivation?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that's really important, even just to say, I hear you, okay, Yeah. All right. So I wanted to ask one question just about being overwhelmed, because that's why this got me here. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm always overwhelmed. There's so much to do. How do I make decisions? Lots of things going on. But I wanted to ask all of you what advice you have, like, or where do you start when you're personally overwhelmed? What are your tactics? What do you do? So Jarek, I don't know if you'd be willing to start. Sorry.
I will preface this by saying I do not condone this.
I like the keeping it real vibe, though. That's what we're here to do.
But I am a power through kind of person. Like, I'll go ahead and make my million list of things I need to get to. And if I know I just need to get to Sunday, if I can get through all of these things, get to Sunday, then I can relax. Again, I don't condone that. I am actively seeking healthier ways of dealing with it. I do also, harkening back to my flute playing days, I think about taking centering breaths. When I start to feel myself very overwhelmed, my shoulders rise and my breathing, oops, sorry, microphone. My breathing is centered more in the chest. So I do take a centering breath, lower the breathing, lower the shoulders.
Oh, I like that.
I think I'm very bad at this. No, I am bad, but I exercise as much as I can because that is something I know that just helps me. It's not as if like I can take a run and I feel better afterwards, but I know that sort of having a consistent exercise practice is sort of, it's a mindfulness practice and it does help remove stress from my body. I work a lot because I'm passionate about my work and I feel very connected to the purpose of the organization through my personal purpose. So I think being grounded in like why I am in the place I am and what I'm doing, certainly not every moment feels that way, but if I'm, if it gets a little hairy, being able to find that again and remember that, like I always say, like, it's a job, but I have a great job. Like I'm very lucky. I love what I do. I get on the best days I write tweets or scripts for Muppets, and on the hardest days we are, we're helping children in crisis settings as well. So like it feels worth it. That's one piece of it, and sometimes like I also need a release, right? Like I like fun. And I also, I do more team outings than any other team I know of in the organization because I actually believe it's for our mental health as well as our camaraderie and team building. And we sort of plan them together. I typically don't plan them. I source ideas, and we did a French fry tour around New York City. We made it up ourselves.
I want to do that.
One of my staff members whipped out paper, and she's like, "We're rating," and had built it.
That's awesome.
I look for fun both at work, but also outside of it. Like I just know that even if I have long work days, I got to find those things. For me, it's cooking, it's hanging out with friends, it's making cocktails, sitting in the backyard, whatever it might be. But I try not to let go of those things.
French fries. Now I'm hungry.
Oh, no,
Okay,
me
when's
too.
lunch? All right.
Quickly, I do a lot of breathing. I like to slow down. I step away from my desk. Sometimes I'll go into the theater if I'm in the theater, see what's happening in there and kind of ground myself in why I'm here. The other thing is I have a praise folder. It's literally called Praise on Outlook. And if I get a nice little email from someone, if I get it from a coworker, I put it in the folder. And when I need time to cry or whatever, I go and look at the praise folder and look at the emails. It brings me back to where I need to be. Do a praise folder. It's really.
I need that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need that more than the hilarious customer service feedback we've received that I sometimes say.
That's
Just
good.
to go back to.
That's a good one.
That's another way to channel,
Yes.
release some energy.
Comedy.
Yes, comedy. Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm a little bit like Derek. We had talked about this before, but I'm a big believer in lists, and I also like to handwrite things. For me, it just helps me keeps things fresh for me. It helps me remember what I'm trying to learn about. So I'm a big believer in notebooks, but also having a clean desk. Like sometimes I'm just running around my office all day and or stuck in my office on Zooms all day or whatever the case may be and throwing things everywhere, and I gotta clean off my desk. And for me, that like mental exercise, it's like it just gives me time to have a fresh start,
like a
fresh
reset.
slate. Yes, a reset. And there's actually some data that I learned about at a conference last year that talked about the power of resets. And I think some of my team has heard me talk about this before, but there's reasons that people are motivated to look forward to like New Year's or even a Monday or a Friday night, depending on your definition of a reset. But like all of those times, like they're symbolic. They give us a chance to have a fresh slate. And so I think a lot about like, okay, when is my next fresh slate? You know, what is the next opportunity I have to reset on something so that I can remove myself from that overwhelmed, you know, moment. And I just had this conversation with someone in the room last week or so, looking at Kaylin. We were talking about just, you know, when you're overwhelmed, there's a lot on your plate, like kind of taking a step back and assessing, is this something that's permanent or temporary? And when is the light at the end of that tunnel, like if it is temporary? So those are a few things that I think about too. All right, so actually I think we're at time for our Q&A. I've so loved talking with the three of you. I think we could talk for hours, so really easily, and admire and respect the three of you very much. So thank you so much for joining me on stage.
Hi everyone, my name is Erin Mast. I use she, her pronouns. I am a senior analyst here at CI. I am a white woman with long brown hair, a black shirt, and pink and white striped pants, and I'm here to facilitate our Q&A. We have lots of questions following that exceptional panel, so let's just get right into it and see how many we can get through. Our first question is from Tamara. Okay, so the question is, what about when you are not permitted to say no? How do you work to build an organizational culture where no is okay, and what happens when you can't?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked this question because actually I forgot to say it earlier, like the reality check of sometimes you just don't have a choice, like, you know. So thank you for flagging that for us. I mean, sometimes I just have to like accept
sometimes
it.
you just gotta do it.
You gotta go, you know. We all have bosses. Like sometimes I'm glad I'm not like the boss, you know, because that's, you know, we're all sharing in this accountability at the end of the day.
I think there is another path, but it's very uncomfortable, which is doing it. Right? But lodging your objections, the why of your objections, and again, back to that transparency, revisiting it at the end. Because at the end, if that thing you really didn't want to do was awesome or very successful, it's actually helpful then to say, like, I know that I pushed back. Because alternatively, if you were right and it wasn't worth it, right? And that's hard because you can sound like a nag, right? But there is, like, if you can get the balance right, and I'm not saying that I know how to do this yet, but if you get the balance right, it is a small step because the culture shift is like its own long panel, I'm sure. But I don't know how culture shifts happen without
somebody
vocal. You got to be vocal. You got to push, right? There's a need to push, and it's how do you do it respectfully and appropriately, but don't let go. And so it really comes down to, like, does it matter to you?
Pick your battles.
Pick your battles,
I'll also add to the strength in numbers, right? So if you're the only person saying no, who thinks it's a no, then it might be a yes, right? But if there are other people that agree with you, combine and bring that, you know, bring the reason why to whomever you need to respond to. There's strength there. It's harder to say no to a number of people. It's easy to say no to one person.
Right, and I think just the communication aspect is just really so important there. Because even a lot of times when you have those numbers, it's still going to be, you're going to do it anyway.
Right.
But you can outline why you said no initially and say, these are the risks of moving forward. We're going to do it, but these are the risks.
Right.
That's a great point.
That's true.
Thank you. All right, so our follow-up question, well, not follow-up, but next question from Diana is, if you are able to say no, what are your best practices in helping specifically the artistic programming team understand that no from the marketing department when certain new programming is introduced?
Good one. Good one. I think the times in which I feel like, I'm happy to start. The times in which I have had to give, I would say, difficult feedback to artistic about something, I actually feel very lucky that at Carnegie Hall, marketing and artistic work very closely. Same to, I think, what the Kennedy Center team has described. But sometimes I just I want to be able to make more money on something and I can't see it. You know, I think that's the hardest one when we're looking at a possible project and we're looking at, is it financially feasible for us? Can we take on the amount of loss that any one thing is putting forward? And that's the hardest time, I think, to give them feedback, because I want it. I want to be able to say yes there. Like, I want to be able to support that. So sometimes I say, like, well, maybe we can push it somewhere else to get, you know, to get here. Like, can we pull the lever somewhere else financially? Can we push the pricing, whatever we can do to make sure that this concert can be supported within the ecosystem of this season? So, but yeah.
That sounds very familiar to how we operate. I really don't think we ever say no to a program.
Right.
I don't really feel like that's our place, but we
I don't want to be that person.
Exactly. A realistic expectation of where we think capacities and revenues might end. We're fortunate enough that we have several different theaters within our space, so it might be can this go into one of the smaller spaces? What other types of tweaks could we make? Could a different guest artist join this program as well? Would that potentially boost sales?
Thank you. All right. Our next question is from Paige, and this is in reference to a situation I believe Derek referenced earlier. When other departments are starting smaller social media accounts, what tactics would you recommend in making sure they are following guidelines or a roadmap from your department?
That's a good question.
I will jump in on that one. Yeah, so right now we're in the process of doing kind of an audit of all of those that are out there, seeing which ones are actually in use, which ones have just not been used in years. And we have actually just been meeting with some of the folks who are owners of those and saying, like, here are some best practices. We are here to support you on it. Or some of the other ones, we had a great talk with one of the departments who had a few of them, and we talked about maybe we can combine them. Like, I don't think you need all of these. So that's where we are.
Great answer. Unless any of you guys have any other suggestions, we can move on to our next question. Great. Our next question is from Deborah. Could you share examples of how you receive requests? How do you encourage other teams to share their strategy and their why as part of an intake from other departments?
So Fatima and I both spoke about intake forms. So it's not in our case. It's for certain types of campaign needs, but we really push. So one no that I encourage my team to make is, like, if someone walks up to your desk or sends you an email for something that needs to go in the form, it is your job to remind them and push them that, like, it's got to go through the form. That's what generally but we actually get them in all ways. Meaning they come in, they're flying in all the time. If we feel like a department or team is not clear on our why, or we're not clear on their why, we will sometimes ask them to, like, present to us. I think again, I'm lucky, like, it's an educational organization. So, like, if you ask someone to, like, explain their thinking, they don't typically get defensive. They actually want to let you in and you learn in the process. So again, that's a way. Often we find people have those decks or have those presentations. They've just been making them externally, or they thought they only had to make them to Devo. So we ask to get that face time. And sometimes I do that one-on-one, with other leaders. And it might be that we meet quarterly. And it's a set time to check in on how our teams are working together. Again, if there are things upcoming, right? And it's a chance sometimes behind closed doors to have some of those more sensitive versions of that conversation.
We have a newly created form at this point, so it's great to hear that you all are doing that as well. It was getting to be a bit like the wild, wild west with emails coming into the social team for people wanting things posted. We are fortunate enough to have a large enough marketing team that we have marketers and our social media team. So we're at least trying to funnel all of those requests through the marketers first, because they're very close to the programming. They've got great relationships with the programmers. And then the marketer can fill out all of the relevant details for the form to service to the social media team.
Yeah, I'll also add that each department in the organization has a corresponding marketing person that they know is their go-to. So it's a one-to-one kind of ratio there, if needed.
I'm getting a lot of good ideas from all of this. I just want to say, too, that we have an email marketing system, and our email manager, Kaylee's not here today, but she has set us up with a new routing system, request system But the point of this story is that we get a pizza party when we get an A on her grading system. So, and so yeah, I just share that because I think sometimes data can be also inspiring and a positive affirmation of great work and forms being filled out and things that might seem mundane but actually are kind of fun at the end of the day.
That's incredible. I think pizza parties should be a more regular occurrence.
No, I like A's and I like pizza, so it's a win-win.
Yeah. All right, we have made it to our final question, and we're going to throw it back to this morning, actually, and talk briefly about AI. This question's from Thomas. Are any of you considering using AI tools to allow you to say yes to ideas that you know you couldn't otherwise achieve through human staff resources?
Whoa, that's a great question.
That's a great question. Anyone want to go first?
I will say no. I mean,
Yeah.
we're doing a lot of experimentation and exploration with AI, but not to that challenge.
Yeah, I'll say no. I'm not sure how well that would go at my organization. Not now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what Luke hit on a little bit too is just like that there's always a human behind it, and for me, like there's that balance of like, how can we use this tool? We are considering using it. We're looking at how we might use it to inform marketing automation and effectiveness and efficiency and all of those things. But yeah, I'm kind of like, I don't know, I believe in our human superpowers.
I guess I will just point out something that was pointed out to us in a presentation this week, which is like, AI is like really off as a buzzword. There's AI integrated into so many of our tools, and like, so part of the answer actually is yes, right? Like marketing automation,
Right.
a lot of
We're
that
like, no.
has AI built in.
Yes.
So like in email, for instance,
Right.
we're doing not fewer, but we're not doing new newsletters. We're not building drips in the same way, right? We're really leaning into like, what is every automation possible that we could, conceive of and set up, and allowing the AI to support us in that way.
Great answer.
I guess SMS is a little, I mean, we are using it like a tiny bit. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, let's give another round of applause for our incredible panel.
Thank you.